we are still facing a lot of hateful sentiments, and that's something that harkens all the way back to the 1800s.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Neeson, and I'd like to welcome you to another installment of Arrow Senior Living's Diversity and Inclusion Speaker Series. Today, Arrow is proud to present an AAPI month conversation with Dr. Soo Mee Kim. Soo Mee, thank you so much for joining us today. Won't you please take a moment to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Soo Mee Kim, and I am a sociologist and a lecturer at multiple institutions. And I want to make sure I can be heard. And I do a lot of work with regarding urban sociology, urban policy, as well as policies regarding Asian and Asian American studies, Asian and Asian American communities in the United States.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. We are so happy to have you with us today. And to discuss this important topic with Soo Mee here, we have the wonderful Arrow resident, Thelma Gilchrist. Thelma, thank you for being here today. Will you please take a moment to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Thelma Gilchrist. I live here at Kent Ridge for a little over a year, and I really love it. I was married for 47 years. I have 2 sons and 3 grandsons that live around, and I'm real happy here at Kent Ridge.
Wonderful.
I try to get involved in everything that they do.
And we're
Not early
glad.
in the morning, though.
Well, we're glad that brought you here to be with us today.
Thank you.
Happy to have you with us. I am very excited for this discussion. So Thelma, why don't you go ahead and start things off for us?
Where is she? Up there, huh? Soo Mee?
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Could you explain a little bit about AAPI?
So AAPI, right, is short for Asian American and Pacific Islander. Nowadays, we go by Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander as a category. So it became AANHPI as a more recent moniker, officially with the government, right? And the way that they decide to label this month, right, of May as AANHPI month. If we think about it, it's a socially constructed category, right? That has very specific historical context in the United States. We have a very specific history of how this category has changed over time, right? And it's meant to represent actually, over 20 different, minimally speaking, 20 different, right, nationalities and ethnic communities in the United States that get categorized under AANHPI.
Mm-hmm. And what are some major contributions?
Some of the major
that
contributions
people may not know about your culture.
So the Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community is quite large, right? So there's a lot of different types of contributions from various communities within this category, right? So some of the ones that are, classics can be considered something like the Chinese railroad workers that helped build the Transcontinental Railroad in the United States.
I read about that.
Yeah, and there was also the participation of Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, right, in the labor movement. For example, there is a Filipino organizer and civil rights activist named Larry Itliong, and he's a Filipino immigrant worker, right, who helped organize a very large walkout. And it was something called the Delano Grape Strike. and they worked with Cesar Chavez to create a big labor movement that had a really long impact on the rights of agricultural workers, for example. There's also someone named Yuri Kochiyama, who was a very large civil liberties activist, and she was very active in building coalitions between Asian and Black community movements during the civil rights era. And there's so many others, right? Most recently, there's someone named Amanda Nguyen, who was a sexual assault survivor. And she was able to push forward the Sexual Assault Survivors' Rights Act, which grants now survivors free forensic exams, right? If they are sexually assaulted. Before, in certain areas, you definitely had to pay, which then, right, prevents people from reporting, and getting their justice. And, there's so many other things, but those are just a couple that I can think of.
How can we contribute to recognizing the immigration groups over the years and how they came here for distinct reasons?
Those are, there's a lot of different ways that people can contribute, right? Everyday folks, right? That's from actively seeking out to learn and to participate like you are doing yourself, right? Reaching out to various resources that exist, such as ones that are done by local community organizations. One in Los Angeles is called the Koreatown Youth Community Center. I almost forgot what it was called. And they have a program called the Korean Storytelling Program, where they reach out to various community members within the Korean American communities, and they build oral histories, right? They interview folks and build histories, and those have very significant impact, and people can always access those. Same thing with UCLA Asian American Studies Center, who have a lot of different projects that give a lot of insight into types of histories and experiences of various AANHPI communities that aren't always highlighted in the mainstream, right, all the time. And so they have great resources there. So people can always reach out to those websites to learn. It's also about, avoiding generalizations, right, largely as Asians, because that can become a type of erasure for a lot of different communities, right, who don't necessarily feel represented under such a label. And, listen to the communities, right, if they are holding, some type of community fair, things like that. I'm sure, it's open to the public, then people can go and participate and listen and learn. And that's one of the best ways to ensure that people can recognize, right, and acknowledge the variety of contributions as well as communities that exist, right, within the AANHPI category.
What challenges or bias are you experience? Are the people facing today, I should say, not you?
I mean, I can tell a couple of stories, but that's for another day. So, in the most recent times with the pandemic, right, we have seen a very severe rise of anti-Asian sentiments. And that's something that harkens all the way back to the 1800s, when we had first migration from Asia with a lot of different Asian immigrant labor that came into the United States. And, back then there was lynchings, right? There was active violence against these communities. And it still, reverberates today, right? Where a lot of folks were targeted within the Asian community during the pandemic, and even today, where, because I guess technically the pandemic's still going on, or something like that, or is it over? But whatever it is, right, we are still facing a lot of hateful sentiments toward this community, because it is being framed as though, the reason for the pandemic is right? The face of
Mhm.
Asian folks, right? There's also different challenges within the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities in terms of undocumented immigration status. People who don't qualify for existing policies and programs like DACA, for example.
Mhm.
There are people who get left behind. And within the Asian American community, there's also a very large subset of that. So, there's a lot of push for different types of immigration policy reforms that would be more all-encompassing. And those are very specific things that are very recent, which also go back in history of, the API community and a NHPI community in the United States. So it's something that's old and still current.
How can a person help in addressing these?
So some of the ways that, people can help is volunteer, right? If you want to, help a local organization out that deals with various groups of within the AANHPI category, right? There's a level of collaboration that can happen, right? Whether that's in the everyday, right? People you hang out with, right? Whether that's maybe it's at church, right? Or temple, right? Wherever it is, you can have, collaborations there, as well as celebrating, right? Whether it's an HPI month, right? Or the Lunar New Year or whatever else, right? That's out there that various communities celebrate throughout the year. That's not necessarily recognized by, government, right? In terms of like, it's not on the calendar necessarily, but, those are things that, can help where people can participate in helping celebrate these communities. And another way that people might want to participate is by, if there are policies that are coming about, whether it's local, whether it's national level, call your local politicians, right? And say how you might, if you feel this way, how you might want to see the types of changes in policy that would help support various AANHPI communities.
So what's your favorite thing to eat?
Oh, well, I have many favorite things to eat. I'm Korean, so I'm Korean American. I came into the United States when I was quite young and 8 years old. But I grew up, my first 8 years there. So, but my mom's a great cook, so Korean food is really always my favorite and my jam, or maybe it's just my mom's cooking. I'm not sure. Either way, it's something that a lot of communities have experience with, right? Where food culture definitely melds into, right? Who they are a part of, right? What kind of community you're a part of. It's not the only thing, right? But it certainly is something that is special when people invite you to their dinner table, right? And share their food with you, because doesn't happen to everyone. It doesn't happen to everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from an Italian heritage, so they all talk about food. They always do food. Lots of it.
Yeah, Italian food is great, right? Yeah. Some
Yes.
people say that, Italian cuisine sometimes has similarities with Korean cuisine because we're both peninsulas. So, Italy's a peninsula, Korea's a peninsula. So we have, similar types of approach to food is what they say, in terms of types of things that we put into our meals. Right. Yeah, certainly. Which generation are you?
I am, my dad came from Naples, Italy.
Okay.
So I'm probably the first generation Italian.
Italian
Or
American, right?
second, I should say.
Right. Second generation here. Right. Definitely.
Yeah, my mom was born here, and I am the youngest of 8.
Oh, wow. That's a
But
large
there's
family.
only 2 of us left.
Oh, but
Over the years, yeah.
Yeah. My mom also came from a large family as well of 7. My dad's from a family of 6, but their generation of parents, right, as in like my parents' generation, often didn't have as many children as they grew up with. And that had
Yeah.
to do with, changes in the economy and politics, things like that.
Mhm.
And so, we see a lot of folks who have not just from Korea, but from other Asian and Pacific Islander nations, right, who have immigrated to the United States for a variety of various reasons, right, depending
Mhm.
on when they came here. There's a very specific set of generation of immigrants, right, who came in the 80s are very different than the ones who came in the 60s, who come in the 2020s, right? They're very different groups because of the amount of policies that have changed over time of how Asian immigration is treated, right, by society and the government itself. And so, before 1965, Asian immigration was quite limited because of something called the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act. I believe that's the year. And that started the ball rolling in limiting not initially Chinese immigration at that time, and then it snowballed into other Asian nations as well. And so we see a very specific type of growth after 1965, because that's when different policies were set up to allow a broader immigration pattern from these various countries. Yeah.
I think our country is like a melting pot now. We have so many different nationalities, and people understand them a little bit better and get along better than they did before, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, certainly. We want to get better, right, over time. There are still a lot of difficulties, right, in terms of, as we talked about, the anti-Asian sentiments, for example, or something that people call the bamboo ceiling, or various erasures that still happen, right? So the interesting thing is that, yes, right, we have certainly become a very different society than, the early 1900s, right? Or the late 1800s, where people were being lynched, right? Chased and attacked, right? En masse. But we are still in a situation where people within the AANHPI community are seeking to become, a more equitable position, right, in our society overall, right, to be in a fair position overall, right? Yeah,
But it's a
we've
good
come a
thing.
lot. Yeah, we've
It's
come
a
a
good
long
thing.
way.
Yeah,
Yes,
really a
yes,
long way.
yes,
And
definitely
I
a
hope
long
it gets
way.
better, huh?
Yeah, we can always hope, right? Especially with people who want to, build coalitions, right? And open their minds, right? As well as their hearts, right? And speaking with various communities, right? Like you're doing, and all of those ideas, right? Big
Is there
insight.
anything else that we didn't discuss that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, is there anything that you're curious about that I could start with?
Oh, I'm curious about everything, but
Oh,
you go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, okay. You just
You're a
let
good
me know.
speaker.
Well, you just let me know. I can just yammer on, right? That's the side effect of becoming an academic or a scholar. So, there's a lot of different things that are going on now, right? One of the things that people often utilize to talk about the AANHPI community has to do with something called the model minority myth, right? For example, where people think that, Asians are hardworking, Asians are, they know how to build wealth, or, things like that, right? Things that seem very positive, but ultimately kind of silences the Asian, American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities in some capacities. But the most important thing about the model minority myth is that it is often utilized as a tool to divide, right? Various communities of color. So the AANHPI community become utilized to, create a division between that community with, for example, the Black community, right? We've seen a lot of different policies that get enacted by kind of saying, well, Asians do this, right? So they should do that, right? And all of these kind of generalizations, right? And mislabeling. But all of that, right, is utilized to kind of corner, right, these various racial categoried groups, right, into little holes, right, so that they become separated and they think that they're different from each other, right, and various things. And it creates a lot of strife rather than unification, right, amongst various communities that can become very disenfranchised or disempowered, right, lose a lot of support, right, within our system. And so we want to make sure that everyone, right, whether that's within the AANHPI community, whether it's the other communities of color, whether that's also with non-communities of color, right, that we all want to be very sure that we avoid pigeonholing. That's the word I was looking for when I said being put into holes. Pigeonholing, right, to prevent pigeonholing AANHPI communities into this kind of model, minority that is the, quote unquote, good label, right? We want to avoid that because AANHPI community goes through a lot as well, right? We have people in poverty and destitution. We have people who are unable to access, right, education. We have all kinds of, right, difficulties that are represented within our various communities that are also shared as difficulties across all communities, right, within the United States. So we want to be sure
Does
of
the
that.
Asian community have trouble getting jobs, or what is their vocation?
Well, AANHPI community are, just like anyone else, right, within the United States, right? There are a lot of difficult jobs, right, that difficulty in getting jobs these days, right, with the economic changes that are happening and the layoffs that are happening across multiple industries. So there are difficulties, right, that the AANHPI communities face. Now, if we break it down and separate by specific ethnic groups, right, there are also very specific community-oriented experiences that people go through while looking for jobs, right? In terms of what kind of jobs, we've got people in everything, right? Like I said, there's a wide range of folks, just like anywhere else. We're not we're not stuck in one area of knowledge, right? For example, there's a lot of different histories of why people might perceive certain communities to be in certain jobs, right? There's a lot of different history behind that. But outside of that, as generations grow up within the United States, that diversifies very, very quickly.
Were you born in California?
No, I was born in Korea. I came here when I was 8 years old. And we came here actually right after the 92 civil unrest in Los Angeles. And so we moved right into Koreatown, which was also one of the heavily impacted areas. So, this idea about racial identities, right, as well as ethnic identity, what it means to be a community, what it means to be part of the United States has always been on my mind in that sense. Yeah.
What was your childhood like?
Oh gosh. My childhood. My parents, we're from, working class. My parents worked, 16 hours a day up to, right? they've tried a lot of different things in terms of work, including, running a small store, right, clothing store, to doing all the other types of business things that they try to get off the ground. And so that created a lot of different types of challenges, right, in terms of economics. But in addition to that, being immigrant and people who did not speak English, my parents also had a hard time navigating the system on my behalf. And so, myself, just like many other 1.5 generation or second generation immigrant children, had to often advocate for ourselves, right? Find out information for ourselves, because we didn't have that capital of being born into a family that already had that knowledge, right? Because their parents grew up here, right? And so we have, a lot of immigrant or children of immigrants, or children who were young when they were brought here. We have very similar experiences in navigating the ups and downs of being in America and as a child.
Typically, what nationality are your students?
Actually, my students are quite diverse, because I do work at multiple institutions. Certain institutions, we have a largely Latinx student population, but those schools are also have good representation of also other students of color, including Black students, as well as Pacific Islander students and Asian American students as well. We don't see as much Native American representation, but yeah, that's a discussion for a whole different day.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for doing this. This was such a lovely discussion. I learned a lot, and I hope that all of our viewers out there are equally as educated and enjoy it as much as I did. Thank you so much, both of you, for doing this. And thank you, everybody, for watching.
I won't be as nervous next time.
You were perfectly fine. Thank you so much, Soma.
Oh, thank you.